Hey, what is up, everyone? So, should be live now. Basically, there's a new Sea of Thieves podcast episode, and I'm assuming that they're going to be talking about a lot of the stuff that's been going on with the game over the last couple weeks, especially with all like the controversy over Season 19's cancellated features and just stuff that's been going on with the game and like the balloon changes. So I thought it'd be interesting to react to this. I haven't watched it yet. I've been waiting to watch it to record live with y'all. So let's go ahead and take a look at it.
Hello and welcome to the official Sea of Thieves podcast. I'm John McMurtry, head of video production here at Rare, and today I am joined by a lovely cast of characters. We have
Mike Chapman, creative director on Sea of Thieves.
Shelley Preston, Associate Design Director on Sea of Thieves.
Christina McFairhome, Head of Community and Communications.
My name's Drew, Production Director on Sea of Thieves.
My name's Drew. I love it. So we do actually have quite a bit
Very
to talk
happy
about.
sounding
We've
for
got some
everything falling
exciting
apart.
results from the last season big lesson. We've got some stuff we want to expand on news that Drew recently talked about in the dev update. So I think we can just jump straight into it. So I think one of the first things I wanted to chat about is something you actually mentioned, not in the last dev update, Drew, but the one before that. That was that we are going to be resetting doubloons, and we're doing that for a very specific reason, which is we're bringing in something called the Bilge Rat Weekender. Do you want to expand on that to give us a brief overview of what we've announced so far?
So yeah, we talked about it as part of the previous dev update that we're going to be reworking the entire doubloon economy. That starts with a big reset. We knew that we needed to reset this economy that's kind of got out of control over time. And when we look ahead to, we're going to talk a little bit about the Bilge Rats Weekender, but when we look to the head of how we're going to operate doubloons in the future, we could do a decent job of like reducing the amount of doubloons that players can earn from various sources in the game. We could deliver a range of cosmetics that players can earn from their doubloons. But we've got this legacy challenge where players over the many years have been earning so many doubloons that I think we got to a point where we couldn't maths this problem away. we got to a point where we couldn't balance the price of new cosmetics and the scarcity of how you're going to earn doubloons in the world without kind of pulling the lever and doing a big reset. So we shared that as part of the previous dev update. And I think that was tough news for players. We're taking.
I'll just say right here, I've talked about it in my doubloon video when we had that a few weeks ago when that came out. I'm all for this doubloon reset. Obviously, it's going to kind of suck for us that have a good amount of doubloons. The time limit commemorative items that we're going to be able to get and buy with the doubloons that we have currently should be a little bit nice treat to get for that. And then all the remaining doubloons are going to be turned into gold from that. But personally, I think this is a good change. I hope they do something with gold, because if you really look at doubloons and gold, both of them haven't really mattered in a long time if you've been playing the game for, a handful of years at this point. So I'm interested to see what they do with the doubloon reset. What I'm not so sure about is how you're going to be able to earn doubloons afterwards, because it sounds like it's going to be limited to like the time limited events, which I'm not the biggest fan of, but it could work. We have to wait and see.
Things away, and even though we've got good justification for why, I think that was a rocky piece of news.
No, it was. And I think what happens is certainly with our players' wallet balances, they see that as a number goes up and it's a representation of their achievements on the Sea of Thieves. And they've attached there's a real emotional connection to that. And I think that we are going to recognise that. We obviously have the doubloon themed commemorative items that will be that we're doing a lot of diligence on making sure they're balanced and priced correctly. So it does become special for those who have earned lots and lots of doubloons over the last few years. But it was tough news to land. We had a lot of players who were upset, and I think we've got some work to do to kind of convince them that we're doing the right thing. And hopefully over the next few months we'll kind of show them exactly what our plans were, and they'll feel really good about that.
So what is the change that's happening to the way that players will earn doubloons? Because it sounds like we're talking about not just that we're going to be resetting, but we're trying to balance how they earn them in the first place.
It's kind of going back to the way that doubloons were originally envisaged. I think firstly, currencies and economies in live and evolving games are just a challenge. I think what you said, Christina, that total represents the total time invested in the game. All that, it's not just a number, it's actually all the memories, all the sessions that you've had. So taking that away is not something that we It's not a decision we've taken lightly. You've seen us take some other tactics with the gold economy in the past, like stopgap solutions, and by building something like the Dark Adventurers set for the gold economy. I think for doubloons, that didn't feel like the right approach. And I think going back to year one, we added doubloons specifically as our event currency. That was the idea of come play the game, experience this moment together as a community, earn this currency at the same time, and then everybody's striving for the same things at the same time. So in a game like ours, which is largely about cosmetics, you get that added value of the storytelling of it. Oh, you've got that thing, and I understand the value of it because I understand what it translates into in terms of play. So when we thought about the Bilge Rat Weekender, we want to have that community focus and that concurrency of attention on the activities and what the value of doubloons mean to achieve that.
I think one thing that could really help them with this doubloon change is almost, and this might sound a little crazy to think because it might be getting too convoluted at that point, but I'd be almost interested to see like a Reaper currency or something like that, like a dark currency or something like that, just because, you know, the doubloons could really work for like the limited time events that we have in the game and have it specific for those things, like the Bilge Rat Weekender that they're going to get into. But a lot of the doubloons that I get are stuff that I sell to Reaper's Bones, like the humble gifts that we got and stuff like the Reaper chest. If those were used for a separate Reaper currency that was for like a Reaper specific store, perhaps they could start adding more like the skeleton cosmetics in there and stuff like that. That could actually make a lot more sense. I could see that doing kind of well. And then that would make it so that the doubloons felt a little bit more special because you're still going to have those people that grind out selling Reaper chests to get like a bunch of doubloons and not really worry about like this kind of stuff going on. So if they're really trying to make it to go back to the original days where it was focused on the limited events, I could see the Reaper chest kind of causing problems with that and the Reaper items that you currently get from like the forts and stuff. But that said, though, if doubloons are a lot less frequent to get, Reaper chests might be viewed as more valuable in the game because people might start trying to go for it more because, you know, you want to get that currency. So I could see it both ways working out. I'm interested to see how this reset goes.
You've kind of got to take that. It's a challenging thing to go do, is to reset those doubloon wallets. I think we were in control of doubloons and what they meant to players in that first year. I think we experimented with stopgap solutions like bringing back the season cosmetics, which we wanted to do anyway, but we docked it to doubloon purchases to take doubloons out of the economy. We wanted to invigorate Reaper's chests in the sandbox by paying out doubloons on them. And then we kind of did nothing for several years and it kind of got a little bit out of control. Like, we see this as a way to build a healthy doubloon economy for the future, which means we've got to take this quite drastic action, but it's in service of creating real player interest over the things that are going to be in the Weekender.
Now, you did actually touch on this briefly, Christina. You mentioned there's going to be commemorative items for people to spend their doubloons on before we do reset them. Shelley, have you got details on what those items are going to be?
I do.
You do? Great. I'm really glad.
There's a set of really cool doubloon-themed items, so players can get their hands on everything from a title, a belt, an eye patch, up to a really cool cutlass and a sail. And they obviously are in kind of doubloon value, depending on like the bigger the item, the more that's going to cost you, so that you can showcase like that wallet that you had. Obviously for the upper echelon of players, they might be able to grab everything, but as well, even though there's a limited time that you can grab those items, buy them from the shop, if you don't manage to log in, we're going to take a look at players' wallets after that window closes and award them as if they had bought those items. So we're going to spend it in kind of the biggest wallet order first, so the biggest item that you could afford, you'll get automatically granted until kind of your wallet's dripped out. And then for anything left over as well, we're going to be converting those doubloons into gold for people. So even if you don't manage to log in or take part in this, you'll still get some commemorative items. But if you really care about which ones you want to go after, then log in and make your purchases. And
so just to talk about Bilge Rat Weekenders for a second, you don't need to go into too much detail, but like how are we sort of pitching what a Bilge Rat Weekender is for the average Sea of Thieves player?
It is a in-world pirate festival. It's a celebration of the pirate life. So the idea is going back to when we were talking about doubloons earlier, about creating this moment where everybody's doing the same things. The idea is there'll be activities to go complete for the winner in the world. That's a little bit more pitched towards everybody's kind of level. And then there's deeper activities with the smugglers, and certain clients will also be making an appearance. So rewarding kind of longer term play and deeper investment in the weekender to get some of the most desirable items. So there's, two aspects to it really. There's the Lorina aspect, and then there's the kind of smuggler aspect. But more effort required from players there, but it gates the best items. And we'll go into more detail on all of this and the thought process on the Community Direct. So looking forward to diving into detail on that.
Cool.
I hope they actually announce the Community Direct, but we did already talk about, I think, what the Bilge Weekender is going to be. That's already been announced in the Insider Forums. If you're curious about what all that is, it's somewhat interesting in some ways. Other ways, it's not as interesting. Like, they're bringing back the Festival of Fishing voyage stuff for that event, which is kind of like, whatever in my mind. But there is some interesting stuff, like with the finding Duke and having like a limited shop. And there's some ideas that I had talked about with like the past like Reaper concept videos and stuff. Some of those ideas were getting reincorporated kind of with this idea that they're doing with the Bilge Weekender. So I am excited somewhat for this weekend event, and it's supposed to be happening every month going forward. So hopefully it's good. I just am worried that because they keep promising things that really only end up happening for like a season or two, we might only see this weekend thing happen for like a couple seasons, and they just say something like, oh, well, we've looked at it and we decided we need to rethink our approach to doubloons, and then they find some other way to do doubloons in the game. So that's my worry with all this stuff. And so far, I wish they would just start with the Season 19 stuff, because I feel like that's the big thing. Obviously, they want to do like the okay type of changes that most people are okay with if you care about the health of the game. There are people that are very upset about the doubloon change because they have that history or they have that big account stuff. I think people that are focused more towards the future are fine with this reset. Where people are upset online, though, is with the Season 19 cancellations and stuff like that. So hopefully they get into that. It looks like they're going to get into that more towards the end.
We'll move on then. So while we record this podcast, we're in the midst of Season 18. Act 3 hasn't released yet. So I think this is a good time to sort of reflect back on those first two acts. So Drew, I'll go to you first. Obviously, we had some challenges with Season 18. Do you want to kind of just talk briefly on that?
Yeah, that was the back end of last year, which feels like an age ago. But yeah, Season 1 of Season 18 was the launch of our Eternal Guard. And as we approached the end of the year, we were scheduled to launch Act 1 in November. And I think building on some of the challenges we shared in the last podcast around Season 17, just being great, a challenge to work on regular monthly updates and for those to deliver at quality that we should be proud of. Hitting that at a predictable delivery cadence of every single month has been tough. It's been really challenging to find that balance between, hey, we've got a date that we're shooting for, and we've got a quality bar and aspiration that we're shooting for, and we've got to factor in player feedback and our internal feedback on the experience itself. I think you saw that through Season 17. We were struggling to almost establish that rhythm. And I think all of those challenges during Season 17 kind of bubbled over and got to a point where it directly impacted Season 18's first act. So yeah, we launched Season 18 Act 1 in December. So we had to take a month's delay as part of it. But that enabled us to have extra time with insiders so that we can fold their feedback in and bring Eternal Guard up to a quality bar that we should have been striving for. But we feel a bit rubbish. It was a month later than we intended.
It is challenging. You think about the Eternal Guard. As you say, we were happy with the quality that we reached in the end. But think about what that content represents. It's a new AI. We're obviously trying to push a move set that challenges people in a different way. You bring in the music, you bring in the visual effects, you bring in the integration into the world building. Like, all of the kind of spectacle of it. And that's just one feature, because the team is split on the month after and then the month after. That's where the challenges kind of arise. And, you know, we are just shipping the Eternal Guard at the end of the day. There's so many ways that can integrate into the sandbox. But I think that's where we really feel the pinch when we're working on multiple things at the same time for that monthly delivery. The move to that strategy came from a good place. It came from giving players regular things to look forward to. But I think when you combine that with the bar that we want to hit and creating meaningful experiences that change the sandbox, it, like, all of those things kind of compounded. It is really challenging. That it's been quite hard on the team to hit that quality bar.
And there's kind of a cascading effect, isn't there? Because as soon as we're then, you know, needing to spend more time on Act 1 or on Eternal Guard or whatever it may be, then that's, like, by design, that's going to then affect the next act and the next act beyond, because it's the same team kind of delivering.
All right, I don't know what happened there. It seemed like my stream died for a second, so hopefully y'all can see this. But honestly, this whole thing that they're talking about, like, I think it would hold more water if it was a situation where they were trying to get out a lot of stuff each month. But yeah, the stream almost died there. I don't know what happened there. But basically, when I see this, like, what they're talking about with this, like, troubles that they're having behind the scenes, it's not like they're really pushing out that much content for each season. It's basically like each month of season 18 was like one small addition. The second month was just basically reskin everything. Really, the only thing that was new was a different type of key, an actual voyage for the Eternal Guard, which they probably should have kept a voyage for the Eternal Guard, because that would have been very helpful for making that content more popular. But I think the biggest problem with season 18 is that they didn't do it in the right order. You should have started the season off with the Ashen Garrisons, because that's a new big activity. And then following that, the Eternal Guard's a good addition to the game, but it's not enough to make us last for multiple months, I don't think. So I'm very hesitant to, like, give them leeway on this, because they're trying to say that they were trying to, like, have these, you know, big updates for each month, and that's why it was having so many delays with it. But I just don't think it really works. We saw past updates that had way more for each month's update, and that wasn't an issue. So, and even the ones that were like the reskin seasons that I still don't like season 15 or season 16, those added way more than what we got with season 18, at least for in regards to the Eternal Guard and stuff. And everything's more than season 17, but you can take that.
In effect, there, Shelley, is that obviously we just announced that we're delaying Act 3's release by a couple of weeks as well. Is that the reason there, Drew?
Yep. That is ultimately the reason. We have the same season team that is working on Act 1 of Eternal Guard, then worked on the Molten Sands Fortress in Act 2, and is working on the Ashen Garrisons. So yeah, it is almost it's a creeping death. It's that cascading effect of if we're late with one, we try our best. We're in there trying to go, how can we make this feature set fit? Yeah. Is there additional resource that we can apply to it? And we're so limited with, hey, time is just going to tick through. But yeah, unfortunately, Act 3 was affected by Act 1's delay. But I think we've had to take that as a team and go, we need to think long and hard about what content we're delivering, how we're delivering it in future seasons. Because I think we've proven that this model that we established in season 17 and we followed up with season 18, that new season strategy isn't hitting the mark. And we aren't able to deliver this stuff at a quality bar that we're proud of on the dates that we need to. So we kind of need to take a step back.
Yeah. And I think we'll
just to give my perspective on this, I feel like at this point, they've tried several different ways of releasing a season. They've tried basically putting all the content in one month and then having no content the other months. They've tried basically having that monthly content, but then just haphazardly split between the different months, like what they did with season 15 and season 16. And then they tried this act structure where they had, basically the themed content in the first month, a limited time event the second month, and then some kind of upgrade to the world in the third month. And I actually thought that system was pretty good, pretty solid idea. but it seems like they just aren't able to get together to make that thing work. So I think what they should do is they basically, if you don't know the behind the scenes, they basically have two teams that kind of play off each other. So like, wow, the team that's doing season 17 is working on season 19. The team that's working on season 18 is working on season 20. So they basically like, go back and forth. I think what they need to do is have one team that's dedicated to like smaller updates in the game that can be done throughout the year whenever they're ready, and then have the other team that works on like the big updates and have like massive releases, kind of like how No Man's Sky does it. So then while you have the one team that might be working on smaller stuff, maybe they can throw in like a small little voyage here and there, but be mostly like little additions to the game. The other team can like really be the one that gets stuff done, and really like the big exciting things would be from them. And then just get rid of having any sort of like due date or timeline. If that's really the main thing, the worst thing about Sea of Thieves right now, I feel like from a player's perspective, is that we see this stuff. They say that it's coming out, on this particular day, and then we get close to that particular day. If you don't see it show up in Insiders, you know that there's a delay coming, and then it says a month delay. And honestly, if we didn't even know that stuff was coming until they were ready, I don't think we'd be as disappointed or as upset with the game, because it would just be ready and it would be released when we find out. Whereas right now with the Insider program, when I've talked about this before with the Insider program, I feel like we almost know about the stuff coming too early with it. So like we already knew about all the season 18 content like at the beginning of season 17. So we're just now getting to Ash and Garrison's next week, but we've known about that since like September, October, around that time frame. And same thing with season 19. And then when they eventually had to cancel it, it makes those cancellations all the more annoying. So I almost wish they would go something like, if y'all have been watching the channel for a while, I like to play Lego Fortnite. With Lego Fortnite, they don't really tell us the updates until like right before they happen. You basically find out officially the announcement of what they're going to be like a week or maybe 2 weeks sometimes before it actually happens. And with that, it works a lot better. We just had this gigantic Lego Ninjago update that really changed up the game a ton. And then we still get like these smaller additions throughout the year. Some limited time events that they've been doing, like there's like a golden sheep that you can go find and add to your village and stuff for this weekend. Just little stuff like that. That's, I think, maybe the model that they need to go with for Sea of Thieves. Because while I compare Sea of Thieves to Fortnite sometimes because they're both live service games, the one thing that Fortnite has in its back that pocket that can really help them is that because they basically replace the game every year, where they change up the whole map, they change up all the items, they change up everything, there's less for them to have to worry about breaking stuff. They don't have to worry that, this thing's going to break if we add these things in. Unlike Sea of Thieves. Sea of Thieves basically is a world that's being built upon over time, so it's a lot harder for them to do big changes very often, like with Fortnite. So that's one area I would give them credit for, is that is an issue that they have to worry about. And I think No Man's Sky is a platform that's a very much more similar game towards Sea of Thieves that they could learn from. So I'm interested to see if they actually talk about what their new approach is going to be with updates. Maybe they're still figuring it out and they might be saving that for the community direct, but let's hear what they have to say.
Touch on a bit of what you're just mentioning there when we chat about season 19 a little bit later on. But before we get to that, I think it's worth maybe looking at the season 17 Big Listen results.
Yep.
If you want to take us through those, Christina.
Let's do it. So obviously when we did our community direct, the kind of second half of last year, we obviously had our ongoing commitment to our players to kind of socialise all the results of our surveys and make sure, we are listening and that we're moving things in the right direction. So the season 17 results are in. I'm going to run through them, and I've got some kind of questions that I'll ask you fine folks. But I think the key thing is a lot of this, I don't think came as necessarily as a surprise to us. And we had some signals beforehand, but this really does help us kind of crystallise, and without sounding really boring, it's very easy to like plot on a chart, right? Like, player experience and player sentiment goes up or goes down, and we have that kind of discrete figure that we can track and follow, which is really important to us when we want to kind of lift game sentiment, game health, data points all up. So
I think it's worth saying as well, it's important that because the Big Listen is a much like kind of wider survey. Like not everybody likes to comment online or to talk online or to have an online presence, and it means we can capture more feedback from different types of players as well. So we're getting a broad view.
There's totally that, and we kind of behind the scenes we have kind of segmented the players into the kind of their play styles. And you're absolutely right. Like our community is amazing, but sometimes there is pressure to view things a certain way. If you want to say something that's kind of like going against the grain of kind of group sentiment, you're more reticent to go into that. So this really does give us a sanitized, kind of unbiased look at kind of a broad section of our community and how they're feeling. So the first stat, so the overall player rating for season 17 was 5.6 out of 10 versus season 16, 6.1. So that's effectively a 5% dip in kind of enjoyment of the season. I think
that's kind of crazy.
Given how
that
we
should be way
announced
lower
the theme
season
of
17.
season 17, it was at the Xbox Summer Showcase. I think it's fair to say, I think reception was a little lukewarm, I think, at that moment. And I don't think we ever really kind of changed people's perceptions of that. So I guess, is that kind of what everyone expected to see? I'll go to you, Mike.
Yeah, I think so. I think part of the opportunity with the showcase is to put Sea of Thieves out there, excite the community. I think that means what you're going to put forward as a trailer asset needs to be ready a lot earlier, which means you're kind of in the awkward position of making commitments on things that then need to get scoped in the team. And there's things in that trailer, Port Merrick, which was there deliberately to kind of excite people, because that's exactly where we were thinking in terms of the feature set and having this awesome siege on that location. I think the reality of actually achieving that at performance across all the various hardware that we support was incredibly challenging for the team. So season 17 was that we kind of had that lukewarm reception. And I think
they should never have shown
we look back on it and you say, well,
showcase.
I'm still moving things and ferrying things around the world. Like, is that really different in terms of what I can do now in Sea of Thieves? I could do before, in Sea of Thieves. But then I think from the showcase to launch, things just had to fall away to meet a deadline. And I think it wasn't the strongest theme in hindsight. It's something we've always wanted to do. I think smuggling has been there, but right even before launch as a theme. But I think the way we executed on that was we weren't happy with that execution. So not a terrible surprise to see that reception.
Yeah, I think the good thing is that this, obviously touching on the Build Wrap Weekender, this definitely gives us a foundation to go build upon and improve. Yes. I think it's fair to say. So obviously that, no spoilers. Watch the community direct at the end of March, but I think that it is a foundation.
Hey, they finally announced when it's going to be. We've been waiting for this community direct like all year, basically. He said I was literally on Insiders testing it, knowing it's a really small update, so I was so confused about the showcase trailer. I don't think they had it in Insiders until right after the showcase. But yeah, I was like getting all excited. If you remember, I think I did another live stream when that came out. I did a reaction to it, and I was thinking about all these different things that they were teasing out in there. I thought they potentially they were gonna get like a portable ammo crate that we kind of saw in that trailer. I was like, oh, it could be similar to the ammo crate that we have, but you could carry like a personal armory with you, and that would go great with the grapple gun that we got the year before, because then you could go hide at a fort, get all the way to the top tower, grapple up that portable armory crate, and then you'd be able to change your weapons from the top there. That didn't happen. That was just my theory from the trailer. What we actually got out of that trailer was basically a reskin merchant cargo voyage that no one was really that particularly interested in, and it didn't really make sense from a lore perspective. Why are we smuggling things to different smuggler hideouts? And the rewards that you get from it, all just being gold, was pretty terrible too. I think the only thing that's good about having the smugglers in the game now is that they could potentially make it better with the Foundation. I don't think there's anything bad with the actual hideouts themselves. They just need better activity to do to make them relevant. And what they should have done with this doubloon reset is they should have had it happen with Season 17 and then make doubloons the only currency for the Smugglers League. That would have been way better to do than have them be the time-limited events. I'm not saying the time-limited events isn't going to be a good thing. I think it could potentially be a fun thing. But in terms of long-term additions to the game, I would have much rather seen doubloons be the sole currency of the Smugglers League and then have them have the black market shop related to them, as opposed to what we're getting now.
Fundamentally, for stuff that we're looking at including and building upon in future with the Build Wrap Weekender. So moving on from that, because I don't want to dwell. But we did have some content highlights. So Black Powder Barrels and Reaper Fortresses were the most popular features of the season. Unsurprisingly, I don't know about you, but I saw many a clip,
big explosions.
which I did enjoy. And I think the dynamic of this was really different this time round because the NDA for Insiders had been lifted. So as soon as those Black Powder Barrels went into Insiders, we had the signals that they were going to be really fun for gameplay because people were having fun with them and kind of vocalizing that much earlier on. So that was great. And that's validated in the results here. And our Reaper Fortresses are really popular as well. So they scored 4.1 and 4.2 out of 5 respectively. And then improved weapon switching was the third most enjoyed feature of the Season 17 feature set, which I think is great because I think when you think about features, you might not necessarily think improving something is going to make huge impact, but from our ratings, it absolutely did, and it was, good. It really kind of hit the mark. So I know the Guardians of Fortune team did a lot of work on that, and that should be really satisfying to know that fundamentally, like, more people than not have said that's changed the nature of how they do combat, which is.
I still look at clips that are playing through of Season 18 and people skeeting with much smoother combat, and I think that's it's hard to call out as a feature and for you to put it front and centre in a trailer, but you feel it every time you're in combat on island or in land.
It touches the whole experience, which is what when Black Powder Barrels, right? Like finding them across the sandbox. I do think on those points, both Black Powder Barrels and Reaper Fortresses were the ones we had the most fun with. They were the ones that were the most fun to design, the most fun to balance, the most fun to have design sessions on. I think at the time working on Reaper Fortresses, it was like, I wish this wasn't the last act of the season because it typically is where we put our strongest content. It just happens to fall out that way in terms of the time that you have. But yeah, no great surprises there, and I think that reflects the way we felt internally about the features.
No, I agree. I think looking at this, the least popular were the Smuggler's Hideouts and the Smuggler's Route Run Voyages. So they scored 2.9 and 2.6 out of 5 respectively. And just kind of going back to that previous point I made about kind of that being a foundation to build on, like, do you see that as a signal that there is improvements to be made in that experience, or kind of new ways of kind of rewarding people for going down that particular route? Like, without giving too much away, how is that Build Rat Weekender going to kind of evolve to make that slightly more interesting?
I think the context on why you're doing it and how that's a focus for players in the sandbox. I think the thing we've often heard from the community, and we asked ourselves the same question, who are you smuggling from? And the answer is you're smuggling past other players in the sandbox. That only works well when everyone's focused on the same thing. So using that as a foundation as part of the Bilge Rat Weekender, as part of a black market, does make all the sense in the world. So that should inject some new life into that way of play.
And I think it's fair to say that just with the limited time that we had, the reward, the nature of the rewards of the voyages for the Smugglers League fell a little bit flat with players, whereas the actual structure of smuggling things on a known route past other players, like, we still believe there's potential in that. Just the items need to be a bit more meaningful.
Yeah. I think with items and concurrency, it really changes the nature of that engagement and that prospect. So I'm excited to see how that works out. And then, again, I'm going to go through these. Game health. So game health improved from a kind of experiential perspective by 1% with regards to cheating at Toxicity. So that's a super small improvement, but importantly for certainly for me, not a regression. We'll talk about this as we kind of tee up Season 19, but there's some work we've got in flight at the minute regarding Hourglass and cheat prevention measures that I think are really going to hopefully see that stat increase a lot more. And if you will afford me the time, I just want to touch on something that we're doing internally. So we did that first big listen survey for Season 16, and we had a really big signal there that actually negative player encounters were really impacting our players' perceptions of game health far more than what we were really necessarily anticipating. From there, we went on and did an additional toxicity survey where we kind of dug really deeply into what players consider toxic, how they feel about toxic encounters, how they would rank certain things that they experience in the sandbox, and kind of understanding motivations from people who have historically been toxic as well, which is a really important thing to understand. Like, why are you doing it in the first place, rather than us putting hurdles in? Prevention's better than cause, etc. And off the back of that, we actually have formed kind of an internal, I'm going to give it a cool name, Strike Force. We have a cross-disciplinary strike force set up specifically to combat toxicity within the Sea of Thieves and really help move positive player encounters forward and just look at where can we find all the 1% for it to become greater than the sum of a little change over here, a little change over here. How can we just broadly lift up the kind of positive social nature of Sea of Thieves and kind of minimize that opportunity or inclination for toxic encounters? So while there's not a lot to share on this at the minute, I wanted to just use that as a jumping off point for like, there's some really interesting work in flight or being proposed, and it might happen quickly, it might happen slowly, some of it, but we are really committed to making Sea of Thieves a much less toxic. I'm going to do this because toxicity means lots of different things to lots of people, but a much less toxic environment. And we really want to promote positive social play and get people feeling like they have more confidence to go have positive encounters rather than feeling kind of nervous to go into Hourglass or nervous to go into certain types of engagements, play styles, etc., because of what they think might be on the other side. So that piece of work is really important. Not a lot to talk about at the minute, but hopefully in future podcasts, lots of really interesting things to share on that.
So
the one thing that makes me nervous about this is I think I'd recorded the video when I did that toxicity survey. The stuff that they claim as being actually toxic with the game is stuff like, is it toxic to steal treasure from someone and things like that. And my worry is they've almost brought in a different type of player base when they released Safer Seas, and they basically encouraged a whole different type of player that does not really understand the core fundamentals of what Sea of Thieves is. The biggest threat on the seas is not a skeleton ship or megalodon, it's other players. So I think a lot of people that play the game now don't understand that. So you'll have people that they'll get their treasure stolen from them, and the other crew that stole from them might not have had their mic on. They never said anything. They basically just maybe, killed them, stole the treasure, and then went and sold. And then that person that got stolen from starts crying that the game is terrible and that everyone's toxic and everything. That shouldn't be deemed as toxic. But then when you have people that are getting on, slurring, just hopping on, spawn killing for no apparent reason, all sorts of stuff like that, that I would at least view as being toxic. So my concern is, what definition of toxic are they going with? Are they going to go with, say, like the PvE player side of what's toxic, like a new gen player of what they could view as like being toxic in the game? Or are they going to go with more of like the traditional Sea of Thieves player, someone that's been playing the game since the beginning, and go with how they view the game as being toxic or not? I'm a little bit concerned about that. I have a feeling they might go towards the other way because they want to like appease everyone. And with a game like Sea of Thieves, I don't think you can appease everyone. Sea of Thieves is just not the type of game that everyone's going to enjoy. And I think that's what they're trying to do. I just don't think it's going to work. So we'll have to wait to see. I'll obviously make videos when they actually start releasing some of these bigger changes, and I'll give my thoughts on that. For right now, there's nothing really to talk about with it, but I am a little bit concerned about how they actually intend to work on those things.
A couple of little wins, a couple of little regressions maybe versus the previous season. How does that sort of like stack up with your expectations when you're building a season? Like that sort of hearing sort of feedback like that?
I think there's two ways to look at that. I think we've used the word foundation a lot, and I think that's just, firstly, having a plan for something, locking it in, even sometimes building a trailer around it, and then the plan shifting based on not being able to get it all done in time, but still prioritizing. We still want content to release for players at this time. Like that's.
Let's be clear. I think he's trying to make it sound like they have like much bigger plans for season 17 that didn't end up happening. Now, unless they didn't announce it in Insiders, the only thing that really changed from what we got from season 17 versus what they had planned, at least from the insider perspective, is that they were supposed to have another voyage that was for the Smugglers League that you found from like Message in the Bottles. Or no, it wasn't Message in the Bottles. The voyage that you get from Message in the Bottles are the smuggler voyages. Those are going to be like an additional type of voyage that you could dive to or do from your ship's quest table. So basically they're going to have like the main smuggler voyage that we have now, where it's like the marking on the map, and that's supposed to have like the high value treasure. And then there was supposed to be like another voyage that was like the lower value treasure that could go to any smuggler outpost. The reason they got rid of it was because it was kind of dumb. It was just repetitive of the same thing that we already had with the main voyage. And the main voyage was already a reskin. So Now, if they want to talk about what their original plans are, if there was something that they had planned before they even made the trailer and announced it in Insiders, I'd love to hear it. But if that was the case, why would you release a trailer like that when you had no intention of actually adding it to the game? No one was forcing them to put a trailer out. No one was forcing them to get the smaller update out when they did. They could have made that like a Season 19 update instead of what we're getting for Season 19, which is not really anything. So I just want to kind of call that out because I feel like there's a lot of trickery going on here. And I think one of the things that also makes a lot of these players mad that are like more connected to the game, they're not just like casual players, is that Rare tries to act like they're very transparent and communicative with their community, but then they have like podcasts and videos and communication like what they're doing right now, where they try to make it sound a lot better than it actually was. They're trying to make Season 17 sound like, oh, players just were slightly less interested in this compared to the previous season before it. No, the majority of players were pretty upset about how everything was reskinned and it was a very poorly done season. There were good aspects to it. I'm not saying that there weren't. I liked the heist event that we had for the second act, and the Reaper forts were a good reskin of the existing skeleton forts, but they're not like a nice big piece of content added to the game. There was really not much content that was new added to the game outside of a limited time event. So I feel like if they were just more honest with it, saying, hey, we know Season 17 really didn't hit the mark, we get why people are disappointed by it. We get that people didn't like the Voyage because it felt like another merchant voyage that we've already had in the game, but we're going to work to start making bigger updates that are more substantial, that are less reskins. If they just said that and were like fully outright honest about the true nature of how people were receptive to Season 17, I feel like a lot of players like myself would say, okay, well, now you're addressing the problem and taking it on head on, and I'll give you some time to work on that. That would make me a lot happier. I'd be a lot more positive about the game at this point if they just came out and honestly said that, hey, we messed up. Here's how we messed up. I'm not going to try to sugarcoat, what we did or try to say that it was only a little bit worse than what we had before. It was pretty bad. We know why it's bad. We know why y'all didn't like it. Here's what we're going to do. That's all they had to do. That's all they have to say. And then I'm all full on board with Sea of Thieves, and I'd be happy with what they have to do next. So speaking
Never
of what's
go
next, I think they're going to get
as a
into
challenge,
Season 19
especially
soon.
when you're prioritizing variety to a certain extent. You don't just want to keep building the same things. You want to build things that you haven't done for a while, or where there is player feedback, but we're trying to meet it in a new and unexpected way. So I think that's always the backdrop to all of this, is like, you're never going to get everything that you want. So the other way of looking at it is that when things don't land altogether, that's okay, because we still have our plans. We've still got a vision for where we want to grow them and where we can take them. So we can still build on them over time. And that's the beauty of having a game like Sea of Thieves. It's always available. It can always evolve and change over the years. There's many examples over previous years where we've launched something, now we can say, a little bit half-baked, and then we've gone back and we've done the idea justice. So you kind of chalk it up that way. I think it is unfortunate that for Season 17 specifically, we had gone out there at the showcase and we were really excited at the time, and just so much fell away. But all we can do is, reflect on that and be careful about the commitments that we make in the future, but also like where we're prioritizing the newness.
Yes.
Because I think there's a lot of us being pulled from pillar to post on team focused on game health, teams focused on toxicity, teams focused on new content. And I think like sometimes we just need to be really focused on where we're spending our chips and where we're trying to have real impact with our community and our player base. And I think our Achilles heel as a team, and I'll say this, is we often try and do too much. And even in limited time, we'll always go, we've pulled it off before, we'll pull.
Too much or too many reskins? I mean, can anyone tell me how you look at Season 18, 17, even like 16 and 15, or any of the seasons for the last few years, and say that they were trying to do too much with it? The only one that you could maybe get away with saying that is maybe season 14. Like having the disguises where you could like pick them up and stuff. That was pretty ambitious to do, I would say, from like a development standpoint. And there was a lot in that season. But overall, like look at season 15. I'd like to go back to this one because I feel like it's a clear example of a Hunter's Call update. It should have been a really amazing season, a really big update for the Hunter's Call that hadn't been really touched in many years. And they gave us reskin Megalodons, taking Megalodons that we already had and put them in a Voyage, taking the fishing mechanic that we already had, putting that in a Voyage, and then you got the one addition of boar hunting. Really, that's all the content that they gave us to do for season 15. And they're trying to say stuff like, we've been very ambitious with all this stuff. Same with the Reaper Forts. Reaper Forts are just taking skeleton forts, reskinning them, and then adding the ghost ships that we've already had for many years. They aren't really trying to do anything new with the game. And that's the biggest problem. That's why I praised the Eternal Guards for a little bit, because I felt like that was at least somewhat of a newer addition to the game. It still kind of feels like fighting like a Skeleton Lord and things like that, but at least it's better than just taking a Skeleton Lord and like reskinning it. They at least did work and do something different with it. And I think next week we're going to see the same comparisons where people are going to say that the Ashen Garrisons are reskinned Sea Forts. Personally, I'm okay with that because Sea Forts are one of my favorite additions in the game. So I'm actually looking forward to the Ashen Garrisons and having something new that's kind of different to do. But this is back to where I was talking about the whole transparency thing. If they were just being more honest with this, then I think they'd get a lot more respect from the player base. But when they try to say stuff like, we were just too ambitious with our plans, everyone that's like your dedicated fans that are watching this video are probably insiders and can see everything that you've been working on. We know you haven't been doing anything that ambitious. It's just the truth. So if they're trying to say that this was them being ambitious and now they're scaling back, that's a red flag. That's all I'm saying.
Let off again. We'll get it all in there and we'll really surprise players. I think the community can feel it when the team is having fun. I think the community can feel it when the team have achieved all of their goals. And like, it doesn't always go smoothly, and that's just the reality of game dev. But no great surprises in any of that feedback. But I think it's also not something we take lightly. Like, we take the community feedback seriously, and I mean, it can't not but factor into decisions we're going to make in the future.
Let's just expand on something you said there, Mike. So, Drew, in the last dev update, you announced some changes to what we had previously announced to Insiders about the content of Season 19.
Yep.
So do you want to just give a brief overview for those that missed that dev update of what we had previously announced and what we announced in that dev update?
Let me talk about what we are doing first.
Yes.
So Season 19's first update is going to be focused around, it's going to be two parts. We've got our anniversary celebration. It's our 8th year anniversary in March later this year.
Many were there.
So there's a range of anniversary celebrations.
Yep.
There's a community weekend. There'll be things for players to earn as part of that. So there's an anniversary piece. But the content and the feature set that's going to expand as part of that first month is going to be Hourglass. So I've been sharing in dev updates for what feels like six months by now of like, hey, we're making improvements to a platform of play that we haven't touched really since Season 8. So the team have been working across various different areas, and we'll probably end up touching on the specifics, but really looking at what we need to do to elevate Hourglass as a platform. And I think we initially looked at that as just set of improvements to be delivered when they're finished.
Yeah.
But we looked at it as an opportunity and when actually these things all connect together to make a really holistic update to Hourglass, and made the decision to bring those together all at once at the start of Act 1 for season 19. So that's the focus for the first month of Season 19. The second one is landing our Bilge Rats Weekender and the return of the black market. So that is going to arrive in the second month. And then the third month is going to be an introduction of Last Ship Standing and a
I didn't even realize this from the previous video, or if they had announced it. Maybe this is their announcement of it. So this is them secretly delaying the Last Ship Standing mode too, because that was supposed to come out in the second month of Season 19, so that's delayed as well. Hopefully that still comes out. Season 19 is just being cobbled together. Like, I don't even know how you can call it a new season. I would almost rather them not act like it's a new season. Save season 19 to be like the Grand Maritime Union update that we're supposed to be getting in the summer. And just like have another, 7 month delay like we had between season 9 and season 10. I mean, at least then we won't be going into season 19 and feeling like there's nothing to talk about. I mean, even with season 9, which I think is one of the worst seasons that we've had in the game, that at least added like some new interesting mechanics into the game. Like the Chest of Fortune was added that season, so it made the Fort of Fortune a little bit more interesting during that season. We also had the adventures and stuff going on. Like, arguably, season 9, which was one of the weakest seasons we've ever had, has far better content than what we're getting for season 19. So, like this Hourglass update that they're talking about, I was perfectly happy and content with it when it was just a background addition to the actual main season content. But when they're trying to cobble it together and make it sound like this is the main content for the season, that's a very bad thing. I don't know why they're trying to even sell it as being a good addition. And then you have the other two additions for the season 19, which are just both time limited events. They have the Bilge Weekender, which is just reusing some of the older stuff. There's going to be some new stuff in it, and I think we either talked about that in a previous video, or I'll talk about that when we get a little bit closer to it. But still, it's just another quickly thrown together limited time event. And then the last ship standing is probably the only really interesting thing. And I'm not even sure if that's going to be that successful if they don't, fix some of the problems that we've seen with Hourglass. I think the biggest problem is there's just not that many people that are interested in that type of gameplay. Hourglass doesn't really make up that big of a percentage of the player base. And even something like from before that with like Arena, which I thought was a lot better of a mode, a lot more interesting, it only had like 3 or 4% of the player base. The reason why Last Ship Standing is not going to be a permanent addition to the game, it's only going to be coming back on like a regular basis as a limited time event, is because they don't have much confidence that a lot of players are going to be interested in it for the long haul. I hope it's a big success. I hope it's a really great time for the game. I just think this is a very bad path forward for Season 19. They should have just released that Orbo Souls thing that was coming out for the beginning of Season 19 that's basically already developed. And I think I'm going to do a video on that tomorrow about what I think they should have done with the Orbo Souls. So you can keep an eye out for that. But I hate how they're trying to spin this. I wish they would just be more honest about all this stuff.
Competitive 6 sloop experience in the Sea of the Damned, which I think we're all very excited for. And at this point, probably has already gone into Insiders for early testing.
There's going to be some fights and there's going to be a festival.
So one of the things that you mentioned in that last dev update, Drew, was reassessing how we work on these seasons, because obviously that wasn't the original intent for season 19. The original plan for season 19 had a little bit more in it. So not want to dwell on the things we've cut, but what have we cut from what we originally announced and why have we had to cut them?
It's a challenge because almost to the same point as you made with the showcase announcement of the smugglers, and then we're almost committed then to the start of season 17. The regular delivery of seasons almost means that we have to go, cool, season 19, our plan is that we're going to do these set of features. And then we announce it to insiders with a no NDA transparent policy that information goes out. And then we learn along the way that changes need to be made. Unfortunately, we've had to remove the Orb of Souls, which was that item that collected souls based on what players did within the game. There was some voyages to obtain the Orb of Souls as well, and the update to the Kraken encounter. Those are 3 things that we announced as part of Season 19's kind of early look for insiders. But unfortunately, as we moved through development on Season 18, and clearly we've talked about the fact that the first act suffered a delay. The third act has now also taken a 2-week hit. We kind of looked at Season 19 and said, it's quite clear that we're running out of road. We're gonna no doubt start in the first month of season 19 and feel like we're not ready. It's either going to be a compromise from a quality perspective, or we're just going to be physically unable to ship these things. So we took a step back from the feature set that we really wanted. Like, we all feel really passionate about the approach for season 19 that we had, and when we need to pressure release on the team, slow ourselves down a little bit and create some breathing room to be able to go and deliver updates across the 3 months of the season that we think are really going to excite players. And as part of that, unfortunately, we had to say, right, there's some features that are going to have to fall off as a result of it.
But I think even though we've lost those features, and obviously it's always a shame when we get invested internally. The reason why we plan these features is because we believe they're going to be great for players. But at the same time, I think where we've landed with season 19, I think it's still a really exciting season for players. As you said, it's fights and parties, but the refocus on Hourglass for the players who enjoy Hourglass, we really believe strongly in everything that we're doing in Act 1 that will elevate Hourglass to a better experience than it's ever been before. Super fast, smooth flow, easy to get into matches, play again, kind of in that loop, getting restocked, getting your emissary auto raised, faster matches because you've got that zone kind of shrinking in. And then in Act 2, you've got that completely different vibe with the party and the Bilge Rats Weekender and everybody to come in to celebrate that. And then Last Ship Standing, which our internal playtests on that, even early ones, which I think insiders will have seen, very early playtests, but just super exciting, just emerging out of the water and seeing 5 other sloops. It's really exciting.
I think the best thing about this is this isn't just good for season 19. That's the best thing, is that Hourglass changes are gonna last and they'll be permanent, but then also you have events that are gonna be recurring.
Yes, everyone knows that the Hourglass changes are gonna be things that are permanent in the game. What that should have happened though is it should have been added like 4 years ago when Hourglass was introduced. Why did it take 4 years or 3 or 4 years to get to this point where you finally update it, and now you're trying to sell it as a gigantic season update or anything worthy of being a season update? Why are you taking this long to finally address the problem? You've waited so long that now everyone that's tried out Hourglass hates the experience of it because of the issues of what it was before, that some of it's going to be fixed with this. The biggest problem though is, now, if you can't convince enough people to play Hourglass, you're still going to have the problem with, like the small minority of players that just sweat out the game and play tons of it, that are just going to dominate anyone that decides, oh, let me go ahead and try that. They have some new additions to Hourglass. Let me go ahead and test it out, see if it's good or not. And then they're going to get into that match. If there's not enough players in it, it's not going to work for the skill-based matchmaking. So they're going to get matched with someone that's been playing a ton, way more than them. And they're going to immediately hate it because they're just going to get crapped on immediately, and they're going to say, well, this mode's stupid, I don't want to play this at all, and then just going to fail again. They don't really have a way to address that. The only way that you really could have fixed that is if you had been more immediate with these changes. Within the first year of releasing Hourglass, we should have at least seen some of these, not all of them, but at least in either the string and circle or what I would have preferred, which is a time limit, and maybe some of the other stuff. The other stuff, I mean, you could have added stuff over time. It didn't all have to be one big update. But things like that should have been done a lot sooner to when Hourglass was released, not 3 or 4 years later.
Events on our live service calendar. So it's going to change the nature of how people play in future seasons. And I think that's really important to consider, because this is content that's
a really important point to make. Bilge Rat Weekender and Last Ship Standing, they don't just go away after the season. They're going to come back on a regular cadence as well. And the Hourglass changes, fully permanent. This is the new Hourglass.
So one of the things you mentioned in the last dev update, Drew, was sort of reassessing the type of content that we're focusing on. So, Mike, I just want to ask you, what does that mean to you when we're talking about reassessing that focus?
Yeah, well, I think about what we've talked about on this podcast, where we've been invested as a team over the last year. I mean, it's a huge range of content. We've just talked about the removal of the Kraken from the season 19 plans. We've talked about the Bilge Rat Weekender, Pirate Festival, Hourglass improvements, ongoing game health, Eternal Guard. It's a huge range of content that we add to the sandbox, and some of that is bolstering trading company progression, some of it's bolstering stories in the sandbox, but reflecting back on where Sea of Thieves has come from. It's come from that place of the vision was players creating stories together. It's about equipping players with these tools and this motivation in a shared world and having these explosion of possibilities that happen when players come together in the sandbox. You know, part of also what we're building at the moment, and we talked about it on the last Community Direct, is our custom servers feature set, you know, being able to hand the world over to our players. So I think about, you know, the future and the content that we want to add. I think it's probably, we need to focus more on how we empower players in the sandbox to create these amazing stories. And I think it's a little bit more focused than where we are now, where we're just trying to bring life and richness to the whole game. But yeah, that's where we're hitting our challenges.
So obviously during this podcast, we've done quite a bit of reflecting, looking back and talking about some of the challenges we've had recently. But we've got exciting stuff coming up soon, actually. And we're going to be talking about it in our next Community Direct, which, Christina, you hinted at earlier, or said out loud. It's going to be March 30th is the next Community Direct. So I hope you can join us there, because we're going to talk about exciting things like custom seas and seasons beyond, stuff from season 19 like the Bilge Weekender and Last Ship Standing. So lots of good stuff to get stuck into. But yeah, so please join us for that. For now, I think we'll end the podcast there. Thanks everyone for joining us today, and we'll catch you on the next one.
I kind of don't really understand why they're saying that we have to wait for the Community Direct to hear about all that stuff, because isn't that what they just spent basically this whole podcast talking about, which is the Last Ship Standing and other stuff? It doesn't seem like they really have anything to talk about for that Community Direct if that's, you know, they're waiting for that. The only thing that they're kind of holding off to talk about till then is the custom servers, which they could talk about now, or they could just release a video for that individually. The only reason I could think for them to make a Community Direct is if they were to start talking about the Grand Maritime Union update and start talking about what they're planning for that. But I have concerns about the Grand Maritime Union update, because there's a lot of really cool things you could do with that type of theme coming into the game for a big update. But as we know from Rare in the past, they're not the best at doing that. You know, I talked about having like a roaming Grand Maritime fleet, which would be really cool if they did some of the stuff that I talked about with that. But part of me is worried that they're just going to do something like that, but then reskin the skeleton ships and then just have them basically act like normal skeleton ships, but they look a little different. Same way that they tried to change like the shipwrecks in the game and call them smuggler shipwrecks, because they added bubbles to them and had different treasure. I just don't really trust what they're doing with the game. I'm really hoping, I think, as someone just commented, it is a must succeed for the Grand Maritime Union update for Season 20. And I think that's what they need to focus on for the Community Direct. They either need to go two directions with this. Either one, talk about it very transparently and say, hey, we have these really big things that we are working on and developing. Or two, they need to keep it very secret, get rid of the people that are data mining, you know, figure out a way to hide that information so that we don't keep getting information leaked, because that's how we know all the stuff about the Season 20 update already. They need to hide that and then make it like a big shadow drop, or not even a shadow drop, but, you know, similar to how we had the Pirates Life update when we had that with Season 3. No one knew that Pirates of the Caribbean was coming into the game, and they were able to come out, and it was a pretty solid update. There wasn't really many bugs and stuff that I remember from that, so they didn't even need an insider test, that kind of stuff. They tested the portals out in insiders, and they tested like the new enemies in the game, but they never tested out those tall tales. They almost need something like that to really get people excited about, because unless you are going to share like really big plans for the Grand Maritime Union and actually deliver on them, the only way you're going to get people excited is if you basically say, hey, here's these really cool things coming, and they're coming out in 2 weeks or something like that. It needs to be either a short timeline if it's not going to be as big, or if it's really big, then you can talk about it at this Community Direct. But why are we going to wait for the Community Direct if all they're going to be talking about is the same things that they've been talking about on this and in previous developer videos? I'm really hoping that there's something that they have in their back pocket. I don't think they are. I think they kind of cobbled together this podcast episode because of all the controversy going on with Sea of Thieves. And I think what they really need to do for make this Community Direct a success is, one, talk about their future plans of how they're going to update the game, whether or not they're going to keep the season system, if they're going to abandon it, do like a No Man's Sky type of update model, or like, are they going to do a hybrid of the two? What are they planning to do for delivering content to the game that will fix the issues that they've been talking about and the reasons why they canceled the Season 19 content? They have to do that. Then they also have to give us something to look forward to. Really, if you think about the average Sea of Thieves player, what is it for them to really hope for right now? For me, I'm hoping for a good Grand Maritime Union update, but for the majority of players, all they keep hearing is there was this stuff announced, then it was canceled, then it was delayed, and then eventually comes out, but it's just a reskin of something that already exists in the game. There's nothing for them to be looking forward to or be hopeful about the game, which is why people are leaving. But if you give them something to be excited about and be hopeful for, even if it takes months for it to come out, that will work, I think. But right now, Sea of Thieves has done nothing. They keep giving us updates that aren't really hitting the mark, both from just what their ambitions are, even though they said that in this podcast that they were doing something that was really ambitious with some of these seasons, like with Season 17. And what their plans are just not what the plans that the fans want. Something that I talked about back with the previous community direct is I wish they would just do like a survey to players to figure out what are we actually interested in them adding to the game. If they sent out a survey to us and said like, hey, are you interested in a new fort in the game? I would say no. We already have a bunch of forts in the game. Are you interested in a new cargo voyage? No, I don't need another cargo voyage. Give us a list of ideas that you have for the game. Let us vote on them. I think if they had something like, are you wanting like mini games and like card games and like board games and stuff that you could do on your ship or in taverns with other players, I would vote for that. And I think a lot of people would vote for that because I see it in my comments section. There's tons of things that you could do with Sea of Thieves. So the fact that they've just been reskinning stuff and acting like they don't even know what to do with the game anymore is really weird, because you could just go on like any place that Sea of Thieves has talked about, whether it's YouTube, whether it's Reddit or the forums or wherever. People have tons of ideas for the game. My channel has tons of the ideas, but other creators have tons of videos talking about what they want to see with Sea of Thieves. So there's not a lack of ideas for the game or what they could do with the game. It's a lack of motivation from the developers here to not reskin their stuff and take the easy route and actually do something that might be a little bit challenging. Do something new, like they used to do back in 2020 when they were adding stuff like Ships of Fortune, where they introduced the emissary system, where they introduced the Ancient Volts or the Ashen Lords, which I was not the biggest fan of, but not everything that they do that's new is going to be a success like some of those other ones. Some stuff is going to be like an Ashen Lords, where it might not land well for all the players, but at least it's something new. I think if we look at the Ashen Lords as an example, that's very on parallel with the Eternal Guard that was added. And I think that the Ashen Lords are probably a better new boss in the game. It had a lot more interesting moves as opposed to the Eternal Guard. But let me read some of the chat here. I think they're focusing everything on Grand Maritime Union right now. I reckon that's why they scrapped most of the next game. I agree. I think that was the main reason that it was so suddenly dropped, because if you had seen the Orbital Souls inside of Insiders, you would know that they are basically done with that addition to the game. And I guess I'll go ahead and just start talking about what I wanted to see with the Orbital Souls, because I feel like it was a mistake for them to scrap that addition to the game. What they really should have done, and I talked about this in my stream last week when I was kind of thinking about all these changes with the game, is they should have taken the Orbital Souls that they had, and they didn't need to make a new voyage or anything like that. Just take the item, which is already developed and already working in the game, add it to the skeleton camps, because the skeleton camps are largely ignored by players. Most players don't do it. If you add the Orbital Souls as the only way to get that is through the skeleton camps, that makes the skeleton camps way more valuable and way more interesting. People would do that. They'll go in, start their game off by going to a skeleton camp and then heading over to a fort. And one of the other reasons why I think it would be good is people talked about in the previous developer video that they're trying to figure out ways to keep players on the same server, and they don't want people to keep diving. So what is one thing that would keep them from diving? Well, you can't dive with treasure. So if you have this Orbital Souls and you're trying to, level it up, instead of diving to another sea fort or a skeleton fort or whatever, you would just stay on the server because you have your Orbital Souls already that's already collecting the souls and gaining value. You would stay on that server and keep sailing around. Literally, they have the solution to fix two issues in the game, which is people not staying on the server for very long, and no one really interested in the skeleton camps because they were added and then quickly forgotten after they were added. And they already have this Orb of Souls developed. They don't need to make a voyage like they were trying to do in Insiders. Just take that item, make it the thing that you get from the skeleton camps. It's really a no-brainer idea, I think. And I don't know if anyone else thought of that before me. It was just something while we were talking about the Orb of Souls last week on stream, and I was just sitting there and I'm like, you know what would really make sense is we already have an orb inside of the skeleton camps. Why not just make that the Orb of Souls that we have for this, new item for that was supposed to be for season 19 that's already developed, release it for that. That honestly, while it wouldn't be a big season content addition, that would have been better than what we're getting now. And I don't think it would take that long for them to do it to replace it. I think what was really holding back the Orb of Souls from being released in season 19 is because they were trying to add like a new type of voyage to go along with it. They don't need to do all that. Just put in the skeleton camps. It's done. Season 19 is great. But yeah, I see you said that you love the Ashen Lords to this day. Ashen Lords aren't bad addition to the game. I think where I got a little bit salty with the Ashen Lords is that with season 2, they basically just took a regular skeleton camp and then replaced it so that you have to fight an Ashen Lord at the end. I felt like the Ashen Lord was just being used too much in different places. If you just took like the Ashen Lords as themselves, I think they're fine. I think what would have been better is if we didn't have that Ashen Winds event and it was just the only way you could get to the Ashen Lords is through the Fort of Fortune. I think that would have made them a little bit more interesting. I don't really have that big of an issue with Ashen Lords. It just wasn't one of my better additions to the game. So, I don't know. What do y'all think? Was this a good podcast? Do you think they addressed your concerns with the game thoroughly enough? Or are you kind of like me and felt like they weren't really addressing stuff? They kind of were just trying to fluff everything up. I feel like there's a lot that they could do with Sea of Thieves, and they really just need to buckle down and focus and have like a better plan that they can stick to for more than a year. And I don't know. I think what I talked about earlier in the stream is what they need to do. They need to have the 2 teams that they have that are developing seasons, one focused on smaller updates, and then one focused on big updates. And if they, have people that want to work on bigger updates and other people that want to work on smaller updates, you can switch them around. I don't care about how they handle that in the studio, but instead of having, one team that's focused on the odd-numbered seasons and the other team that's focused on the even-numbered seasons, get rid of the season update structure because you obviously can't stick to it. Start focusing with the team on bigger additions to the game. Have them work on the Grand Maritime Union update and really make that a gigantic addition to the game. A big title content release like how we used to have, where it would be like Sea of Thieves Ships of Fortune update, or Sea of Thieves Ashen Winds when we had those themed updates back in the day. And then throughout the rest of the year, in between those updates, you have the other team that works on smaller additions. The Orb of Souls would have been a great addition as a smaller team update. The Hourglass changes are a small addition to the game. There's so much they could do. Someone's comment here: hideouts, savable outfit presets, friendly fire toggle on captain ships. All that would have been great. I disagree with the friendly fire toggle on captain ships. The only reason I disagree with that is because when we get these custom servers, you'll be able to do that as much as you want. Because one of the things I'm looking forward to with custom servers is being able to go in there with my friends and be able to put ourselves on different teams and be able to fight against each other. The one thing that we gotta be worried about though with the custom servers is the same problem that we saw with Fortnite when they added creative mode and playground and stuff. When Fortnite added those different things in the game, it gave basically players that had too much time on their hands a way to practice and get really good at PvP in it. And while that's, I'm not hating against that in the game, but what you saw, what happened in Fortnite is then the skill level of certain players got way higher than the rest of the player base that, either is in school or, works a full-time job, whatever the case may be. Not everyone was able to keep up and grind out and practice the game like that. So I'm a little bit curious to see if that happens with Sea of Thieves, where once they add custom servers and you have people that are decently good at PvP just fighting against each other and they start trying to get themselves better and better, almost like they're training for an Olympic sport or something, that it might make the skill gap even worse in Sea of Thieves than it already is. But I will say I am looking forward to it. I think there's going to be some fun content we can do with it. One thing that I want to do with it is I thought about doing like a charity stream or something where like we have like two teams where we both get like a rowboat and we have to row across the entire Sea of Thieves map, and whoever like makes it there first would win, and like we'd have like different things that would go on during that challenge. I think that would be a cool thing to do. There's so much that we can do. Even just the like practicing PvP with friends will be fun, and I think that could be really cool. So, yeah, hopefully we start getting some of these cool things I did to the game. They obviously know that we've been wanting stuff like savable outfit presets. They know that we've talked about wanting like our own pirate hideouts. They know that, you know, we want to be able to do practice PvP fights and TDMs with our friends on these custom servers. And I think we're going to get that with the custom servers. The other stuff, hopefully maybe they can start focusing on that. Maybe Rare should just hire me. I'm just saying, you know, I already got a full-time job, but, you know, if you want me to work part-time, you can fly me out to London or wherever Sea of Thieves is located, with Rare located, out in the UK. You can fly me out there on the weekends. I'll help you out. I'll tell you what you need to do. But, I don't know. I don't know, but we'll see. I probably will stream the community direct depending on what day it is and, you know, what time it is. I was lucky enough that this happened to be on a day that I was not working, so that I was able to just live stream this podcast episode. So if you all enjoy it, let me know in the comments to this video's recording, or, you know, you can let me know in the chat if you like me doing this kind of format where I'm kind of reacting to see these like podcasts and stuff like that. But I hope all of y'all enjoyed. And yeah, in the chat they mentioned Golden Glory is going on this weekend. That's something to keep in mind. I was trying that out a little bit earlier today, so you get double gold and XP. So definitely a good time to be playing the game if you're interested. I don't think that applies to doubloons, sadly. So if you're trying to grind out doubloons, it's still not a great time to do that yet. But it might apply to Allegiance. You can check that out. So it might be a good time to try to get your Hourglass reputation up before these big changes happen. So, yeah. So you let me know in the chat it does. I'm assuming it does for the Allegiance. Oh, both of them it does. So, it might be a good time to grind out doubloons for this event. Because we have those limited time items that we don't know a price yet. I wish they announced the price in this. I was really thinking that they were going to announce the prices for those items. But maybe we'll see that in Insider soon. But with that said, I think I'm going to go ahead and end this. I hope you all enjoy the rest of your weekend and keep an eye out for some videos for tomorrow. But that's all I have for this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all later. Bye, y'all.